Hey everyone, welcome to the Senstennial Podcast. This is season 3, episode 23 of our podcast, and we're doing a season wrap up. We're going to discuss Pierre Dorion's comments both in his media availability to the press and also his interview on TSN 1200 that he did. Aside from that, we'll talk about Belleville making the playoffs, what we expect out of them, and then we'll give our Senstennial awards for the most impressive player, most disappointing player, and the most surprising player, either good or bad. So right off the bat, we'll jump into the Pierre Dorion comments. Now, off the top, I know it's been talked about a lot. Pierre Dorion was quoted as saying that he would spend to the cap if he could be guaranteed 41 sellout crowds at the CTC. It was taken out of context. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that by now. If you haven't heard the quote already, I suggest going and checking out the interview itself. It was not phrased that way. He was joking about it. We can move on from it. That's basically my point on that. I don't know if either of you two want to touch on it. If not, we can press ahead.
It's just how many times does he put his foot in his mouth, though? Like,
yeah, no, I hear you.
And yeah, it obviously doesn't help that TSN's transcriber is Dean Brown. So that probably leaves a lot to be desired, but I think it may not be the best for tongue-in-cheek, but I can appreciate that your Reddit posts have, chuckles when he says this or stuff like that, because it gives the reader a little more context.
Some stage directions.
Yeah, but it gives context to a situation where it's like, the ownership or what he feels like he needs to add when he laughs, and we need to add this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, but at the same time, it might not be the best thing to joke about when you're kind of dunking on fans a little bit.
I think it was basically him trying to say like, listen, he's going to start raising the. Well, it's not even his decision, right? He said he goes before a board, he talks to them. They're this season, going into next season, I should say, they're not expecting to spend to the cap, which is totally fair. I don't think Ottawa should be spending to the cap. But he basically did say they're going to be spending more than they have the last 4 years. There's a bridge, is the word he used, of a plan that they're going to use that will increase the internal budget, I imagine, is what he means when he says increase their spending. And that'll allow them to add a player. I mean, I think that'll also encompass Norris's contract extension. I think that's a given. But I think when he says that, they do want to add a quality piece. And we'll see what happens. We'll see how much money that is. We'll see how much money. I mean, by next fall, we'll know how much the team is spending in both cap dollars and real dollars, as they say. So we'll find out in September either way. But it seems like Dorion has been given the go-ahead to spend a bit more money on the team.
Which is a positive. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I hope that is the case, because we got a lot of big contracts coming. And we need to start adding outside pieces with all the draft capital and prospects that we have, because it's time to start prepping to be a playoff team and eventually a cup contender.
And I think we can start off talking about personnel before we get into what the team should do in the offseason. And I think right away, they're already trimming some of the pieces that a lot of us as fans really didn't want around for next season. It started at the deadline. Obviously, Zach Sanford, Josh Brown, two guys who really had no future here. And then, coming at the end of the season, Pierre Dorion says Chris Tierney isn't coming back, which I'm sure a lot of fans were really happy about. His play has just fallen off a cliff, and I do hope he gets a league minimum contract somewhere, but it won't be with Ottawa. He said Tyler Ennis won't come back, but they'll circle back to him in free agency, depending on how much depth they have going into next season. I appreciate that comment. I think Ennis is a great depth guy, but don't sign him just because. Make sure that if you're signing him, it's because you want that insurance, that extra depth. And then Victor Mete is a guy they're not going to qualify. So he's going to become a free agent for the first time in his career, which is interesting for him. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, and then we'll go into the re-signings. He said he plans on offering Josh Norris an extension and he wants to get it hashed out quickly. I know some people were frustrated that Dorian said earlier in the season that he wanted to sign Josh Norris sooner and then he didn't get signed. Dorian kind of explained it out that he talked to Craig Oster, which is Norris's agent. And Oster basically said a week later, got back to him and was like, hey, I know you want to sign Norris. He wants to wait till the end of the season and then he'll sign after the season. So Dorian said, basically it takes two to tango. He didn't word it quite like that, but it makes sense, right? Like the player, I think Norris had a lot of confidence in himself and what he thought he could bring to the table. And now I think he's earned himself at least $1 million, $2 million more dollars a year. So we'll see what happens, but I'll let, go ahead and touch on the players coming back and not coming back and that stuff.
I was mostly going to say, like, I remember somebody had said, like, Josh Norris, by deciding that, probably earned himself 10 more million on the whole, like his contract as
overall, a whole.
Yeah. Which I can appreciate. He made a proper decision there. And, I think Josh Norris is going to be considered, one of the elite goal scorers in this league. And he'll secure the bag. I can appreciate the fact that he didn't want to do it before the season or at any point during the season. And I can't fault Dorian for that. It is what it is. I think trimming the fat of those players that aren't going to be coming back. I mean, it sucks to see Tyler Ennis because I love him. I think he's an excellent veteran forward that any team would be lucky to have. I think he definitely, if we're going to carry 13 forwards, he would definitely be, in my opinion, a perfect role guy for that. Getting rid of Tierney is a must. Victor Mete was like surprisingly terrible this year. I went into it with hopes that he could, be a very good bottom six defenseman, and it was like he couldn't do anything that he was good at anymore. He just sort of fell off a cliff in terms of his gameplay. Guys like, Michael Del Zotto and Nikita Zaitsev, those are guys that, you probably want to move on from. And I mean, it speaks volumes that Del Zotto is not joining this Belleville Sens for a playoff run. That's wild. But, he just wants to secure his real estate business.
Yeah.
I think he's probably got more hockey to play in him at the NHL level, but I can't see it being with Ottawa. And next year he's on his deal is 1 year left at 2.5. And I think a lot of teams can manage that. So I liked a lot of the stuff he said when it came to the personnel stuff. I doubt they start talking Stützle contract this year. He'll probably be a guy that starts that conversation, sort of near the trade deadline going into the end of the season, because somebody said that, a Jack Hughes contract could be very, very good for him. I think Jack Hughes's contract was a 3-year deal or something. And it was worth like 8.5 or something like that. And Jack Hughes is going to be a monster. Like he was on like a 90 something point pace and then got hurt. So I think Stützle has the ability to do just that as well.
Yeah. I want to let Bennett get a word in, but I do just want to say Jack Hughes has an 8-year contract at $8 million per.
Oh, wow. Then maybe that's just a young kid contract to sign an older dude contract at the end of his, when he's 28 or something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that we're seeing some positive steps in the lineup department of moving on from guys like Tierney and Mete. Although I couldn't imagine a universe in which even Dorian would want to keep those guys around. I say positive steps with an asterisk, because there is a high probability that we will end up with similar anchors being acquired this offseason if the last several off seasons have been any indication of how this team operates. So I don't love that. I mean, like the cast changes, the names change, but the problems remain the same. You know, we go out and sign or trade for these guys who make the team worse, and then they make the team worse until we finally get rid of them, and then we bring in the new guys that make the team worse. And but so I mean, I'm a little, you know, like seeing Tierney and Mete, and you know, like we'll touch on this later, but there's other players that could be buyout prospects for the Sens. You know, it's great to see them trimming the fat in that way. I'm just worried that more fat will arrive. But that being said, I mean, he spoke a little bit about personnel. He heaped praise on some of our young guys like Shabbat and Norris, who've had banner years, which is awesome to see. And I don't think that we've even talked about this yet on the podcast, but I mean, a quick shout out for the first season in 11 years that the Sens have had 230 goal scorers in Tkachuk and Norris. So that's awesome. Norris will absolutely get hella paid this offseason. I think that there's a lot of appetite for that deal to get done, at least to hear Dorian talk about it. Norris sounded very positive. I don't really see him as like a holdout kind of guy. I mean, like maybe people thought that about Brady, but I think that there's enough of that kind of like Tkachuk kind of like legacy streak in him that people may have figured that it was a possibility. But with Norris, I mean, I really think that he wants to commit here, and so that'll be great. And then yeah, and it's just like you said, I mean, like Timmy has every right to bet on himself heading into next season after some of the steps he took forward this season. So I'd be very surprised if he did like Shabbat and committed a year out from the end of his ELC. I think he's gonna ride it to the end and bet that he can put up, you know, like 70 or 80 points next year.
I do think that if the Sens are like, hey, listen, we'll give you kind of a pay bump more than what we were expecting to give you if you'll sign early. You know, like let's say hypothetically right now, the Sens think he's worth $7 million. If they're like, hey, listen, we'll give you $8.5 million right now if you sign for 8 years because we see the potentials there. I wonder if that would at all entice him, getting that extra money right away with the expectation he'll produce. I know it can be risky because you never know what could happen with a player, but I think in the case of Tim Stützle, I'd be willing. And if I was GM, I would be very comfortable making that offer. The one thing I will say, going back to the same cast of characters, I totally get your point, and it's true. The Sens have rolled out guys season after season who have been over the hump in their careers or a detriment to the team. The one
their careers never had a hump to begin with.
Well, I think guys like Derek Stepan, you could argue that they were quite a good player at one point in their career. Eric Branson, okay, maybe not. At one point, he was respected as a defensive defenseman. He's rebounded in Calgary. Evgeny Dadonov, obviously, he was a very good player in Florida. Didn't work out here. But he said that their goal was to surround the young core with high character guys, and that he wants to turn that now into just, instead of high character guys, he wants it to be high quality guys. High, always high, always Stone.
Always high.
We're trading for Stone. We're trading for Clayton Stoner. We're going to get them all back in here. No, but he said now, like, the time to trade late picks. And I don't want to say that he's referencing guys like Austin Watson and Josh Brown, but that's kind of what he was indicating. You know, he doesn't want to trade late picks anymore for guys. He wants to trade for quality players. So to me, that is signifying a change. And I think that was kind of prompted on by his exit interviews. Both Thomas Shabbat and Brady Tkachuk, he said more so Thomas Shabbat, brought up in their exit interviews that they want to see the addition of quality players at this point. They both believe the team's ready to take a step forward. They're the two leaders, undoubtedly, in the locker room. They want the team to take a step forward. I think at the trade deadline, actually, is what Pierre Dorion was saying. Thomas Shabbat told him, he's like, listen, you know, picks and prospects are fine, but we're at a point where we have enough picks and prospects. They can only go so far. The team needs players and quality players to take the next step. So Dorian also said Shabbat knows the type of player they're going to target this offseason, which to me, I was like, okay, that's interesting, because I would imagine that if Dorian is saying that Thomas Shabbat knows what kind of player they're going to target, that's saying like Shabbat's on board. So I'm very curious to see if Ottawa goes in free agency and tries to make a big splash, which I know is against the norm for them, or whether they'll try via trade to bring in a guy. And we can talk about that more in a bit, but I'll swing it back to you, Ben, in case you have any thoughts on that, and then we can pass it off to other Matt here.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate at where the Sens were in the rebuild. They wanted to have these quote unquote character guys in the locker room and stuff. But I mean, if that was honestly, I'd be surprised if that was honestly it really sounds like backpedaling and kind of, trying to retcon what were just moves to acquire bad players. I mean, listen, you can have all the character in the world. I don't think any GM is going to sit there and say with a straight face, yeah, I purposely acquired players that I didn't care whether they were good or not, only if they were nice guys. There's no way that was the real strategy, which of course leads us back to the idea that he thought those guys were good. And that is the abiding problem with Sens recruitment, is that when they go out and acquire guys like a Branson, they thought he would help this team. They thought that he would make this team better. They thought Zaitsev would make this team better. They thought that, Josh Brown would make this team better. And that's so obviously not true. And I think that you can talk about character all day long, but I don't think any self-respecting GM would go out and acquire a guy knowing that they're bad, but just because they have good character. So I think this is Dorian just trying to retcon his own mistakes as opposed to an actual strategy that this team employed.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on there. It doesn't help that all of those guys were absolute just washes. Nothing went well for them, and it was immediate that nothing went well for them. So he had to find sort of a way out to look at it as well. Derek Stepan is a solid veteran guy who has pedigree, and you bring him in and he just craps the bed. And it's we were looking for a solid veteran presence, but it just didn't work out. I think even with the Dodonov thing, it's so hard, because I think everybody said, if this doesn't work out, you just know that Melnick's going to pull on the money purse strings and no longer allow big splash free agency stuff. And that was just, I think it was just unfortunate. I think Dodonov had over 40 points this year, which probably would have made things a little more, swallowable, for lack of a better term. But at some point, he needs to learn from his mistakes, and I'm hoping that he can do that now, and we can move on, find quality guys, but. I think
Shabbat and Tkachuk called him on his nonsense too.
You have to wonder.
I think that reading between the lines here, Shabbat and Tkachuk saying we want you to bring in quality guys. Dorian can say all day long that, oh yeah, well, we were just worried about character at the beginning, but no, Shabbat and Tkachuk said stop bringing in these scrubs that come into the team every single season, and are complete garbage, and then we have to share a locker room and a practice rink with these guys who are not NHL players. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, talk to us about who we like playing or don't like playing, because I could tell you that it's pretty easy to get around Eric Goodbranson, or Derek Stepan doesn't have the same jump he did, and it's easy to stop him on offensive breaks. So that sort of stuff. Talk to your players, talk to your leadership group. Yeah. And I don't think that happens. So that's a really good point, Bennett.
And I think now there seems to be an importance on that. I think Dorian actually even said he's going to try and get Shabbat and Tkachuk's help in enticing players to come to Ottawa, which I think is kind of funny. But hey, I mean, let's be honest, guys. Shabbat and Tkachuk are going to outlast Dorion in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're both signed, I think, until 2028. I could be wrong. I think about then.
Yeah.
So it's like, Dorion isn't going to outlast these guys. He knows that if he wants to stay as GM, he's got to build around these guys, because it'll get to the point that him and DJ Smith, one or both of them will be gone if this team does not turn around by as soon as next season. They're both gone, one or both.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it adds an interesting element. The other thing, if we're talking about off-season additions, that I thought was very interesting, is somebody asked Dorion if a top 4 defenseman is still an area that he believes needs to be addressed, or if with Jake Sanderson coming in and Travis Hamonic being added to the blue line, he thinks they're set. And he kind of chuckled, which was interesting. I don't know if the question caught him off guard, but he said that essentially every GM, whether they're a cup contender, whether they're middle of the pack, every GM would say, yes, they're looking for a top 4 defenseman. And he said that he knows he can be very conservative when it comes to his approach to prospects, Jake Sanderson included. But when they looked at the right side, and they said that he had heard a lot of chatter about what contract demands would be for certain players in the offseason. And he said that kind of, I guess, scared him away. I don't know. But Travis Hamonic was a cheaper option that they knew had another year left of term, a guy that they could bring in who wasn't going to be asking the world, like wasn't an expiring player, and wouldn't ask the world if, I hope they don't, but if they extended him after next season, right?
Yeah.
So he kind of avoided the question, but it seems like the defensive core will now be set with Shabbat, Zub, Sanderson, Hamonic, and then I assume Brandstrom, Holden, or Brandstrom, JBD, Brandstrom, Thompson.
Also, hilarious shocker that DJ Smith loved Ron Hainsey.
And I mean, honestly, Ron Hainsey was a pretty good defenseman up until I think the last cup that Pittsburgh got. I think after that,
like Ron Hainsey in his day was an excellent defenseman.
Yeah.
Ron Hainsey on Ottawa was trash.
Honestly,
wait. And then I think
he was better than like
Branson. Yeah. And then I was like, oh man, I wish we had Ron Hainsey back. I totally get it. And I think you look at the guys that are going to be on the market, and the asking price for them is going to be higher, because it's not a defenseman's year for free agency. I mean, last year the big fish was Dougie Hamilton, and if teams missed out on Dougie Hamilton, they were going to overpay for other defensemen. But you don't have a lot of quality defensemen, and you're probably going to see the exact same effect for teams that are desperate for it. So you get a cost-controlled Travis Hamonic, who didn't play amazing with Thomas Shabbat, but I think would be fine playing with Jake Sanderson on that top 4 pairing. I also wouldn't hate the idea of Brandstrom being that guy, and then Sanderson being a little like slowly pushed into the fray there. But finding a top 4 defenseman that a team doesn't just covet straight up is difficult. And then you have to find one outside of the league. And we lucked out finding Artem Zub. Like that is a diamond in a very rough place. But our guys like JBD and Thompson, like they're knocking on the door, but they need to oust a guy like Holden or a guy like Hamonic on that right side, because if not, then you're right, our D is set, and there's still a Nikita Zaitsev kicking around, and there's still a Michael Del Zotto, but I don't think Del Zotto will ever play another game as a Senator.
And I personally think Nikita Zaitsev is done. I think they're going to trade him, or so. I don't think he'll be bought out. I do think they'll trade him to like Arizona or somewhere that they want to tank next season. And Arizona seems like a prime candidate to want to tank for Bedard. If you look at the draft picks they've accumulated, basically the only guy on the roster who's not untouchable is Clayton Keller. I know he at one point was available. I believe that some of the insiders were saying that because he got so hot post trade deadline, the talk of potentially trading him has really dropped down, and Arizona seems pretty set on keeping him, especially because he's cost controlled for so many years. But what I was going to say about that is got a little distracted with the Clayton Keller thing. I do think that, this season Sens fans want the, hashtag bring Giroux home. I think next offseason it'll be bring Mackenzie Weegar home. So we'll see what happens on that front. But I think he might be a right-handed defenseman that Sens fans want to go out and get. I don't really know where I was going with that, to be honest. I think
it was the Zaitsev thing. You wanted we need to get rid of him in Arizona.
He'll be traded, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll return, especially because near the end of the season, DJ Smith and Pierre Dorion, did you hear them talk about him at all?
No, not really.
In their plans as a defenseman for next season, did you hear them talk about him at all?
No.
And that is a huge shift from last offseason, which what did they say?
Elite. He was an elite defenseman.
Tough to play against. So
yeah.
In my opinion, he gone.
And it goes back to the point of talent evaluation. If you have a coach and a GM who can't evaluate talent properly, we're screwed. And if you have a coach and a GM who can't learn from their mistakes and improve that way, we're screwed again. So I think Pierre Dorion's on his fifth try when it comes to things. But this is it, because I can almost guarantee the fact that, the daughters of Melnyk are going to sell, and a new owner is going to come in, and he is going to be on very thin ice. I don't think so as much for DJ Smith, because he did, shape up, and as a DJ Smith, as opposed to an apologist,
a truther,
a DJ Smith denier, I guess. I went at him a lot, and he improved a lot of things. So I can guarantee that the leash that DJ Smith is on is way longer than Dorion's would be with a new owner.
Also, because Tkachuk just likes DJ Smith so much.
Yeah, and that goes a long way. And Dorion just can't say the things that he wants to say correctly. And I was reading a Reddit post, and I don't think he should be doing press conferences anymore. It should be, Pierre McGuire. And I don't know about you guys, but holy moly, have you seen or heard from Pierre McGuire at all this season when it comes to important things?
You know what? I'll pass this one over to Ben. Ben, you can take it.
Well, I was gonna bring that up when you started us off talking about, Dorion's, I guess you could maybe call it a gaffe, about joking about attendance, which as we know is a very sore subject with Senators fans. I mean, we had all been led to believe, I don't know if it was ever officially stated, but this was sort of the going opinion, that part of the logic in bringing Pierre McGuire on board with the Sens was that, say whatever you want about him and his takes and the way he thinks about the game, but I mean, he's a communicator. He's a professional broadcaster for a long time, and was someone who's very comfortable speaking with the media and is very articulate and can handle a room well, which are all things that Pierre Dorion isn't. And I think we all expected Pierre McGuire to have a kind of role like that once he joined the team, and that hasn't been the case at all. And I understand, I mean, listen, you are the GM, some stuff, it has to be the GM, like Kyle Dubas doesn't just send some lackey to go talk to the media after the trade deadline. That the GM does that, and I get that. But I think the TSN interview, for instance, is I would have expected McGuire to be the one doing something like that, and I think it's odd that it makes you ask what has his role with this team been? What has been the purpose of bringing him on board, if not to do stuff like that? If it's just to encourage us to sign Michael Del Zotto, then we can call it maybe a bit of a miss, the whole Maguire experiment.
Yeah.
But
And I think there are also rumors about which moves he's contributed to and not contributed
sure.
to.
Yeah, I don't know
think
for sure
Gaudette
what
is one of them.
Yeah, but like
sure.
and that's been okay.
Yeah, but some of the moves I think people like just talk out of their ass about. Like they'll say, what was one of the guys? Like Delzato was a Pierre Maguire move. It's like, do we know that? Do we actually know that don't. Without a doubt? Like, and I think some people say this, and then other people treat it as gospel. And I'm not sure what he has or hasn't been responsible for. Everyone's alluded to him possibly being responsible for picking up Gaudette on the waiver wire. Fine, whatever. It's a waiver move.
Yeah.
When it comes to Holden, he would have had firsthand knowledge of Holden from covering them in the playoffs last year. And honestly, I think that was a great pickup. And I don't care if people want to argue that against me. He didn't have a blow you out of the water season, but he did exactly what they acquired him for.
It's been solid. Yeah. He came exactly as advertised.
Yeah.
And has been like a decent acquisition.
Yeah. And that's all you can ask for. And man, those locker room videos after each game are so worth it. That alone, you're just going, yeah, walking down the hallway. It's so funny. It gets me every time. I love it.
And like he's one of those guys that like these coveted character guys. When Bennett and I went to the game, he spent 4 or 5 minutes trying to get pucks over between the glass and the netting to like kids.
Yeah.
And
this group of teenagers standing at the glass. I swear to God, he tried 12 times in a row to flip a puck with the stick so that it made it to the right side of the net and slid down to where they could get it.
I think it happened hilarious. Once. Like,
he got it like once in like 12 attempts.
But that's
he's a nice guy. He's great.
And to that point, like, I don't know about you guys, but watching this young core, one of the things I had said while watching warmups is Zub, Shabbat, Norris, Batherson, Kachuk, and Stützle were all of and Chris Tierney, but Tierney was like out there because he wasn't going to get time. But all of the core guys were out there till the very end of warmups, just, vibing, having a good time, practicing, and like doing stuff with fans. I think the whole like, give me a twig and I'll give you a Twix or whatever. I think it's a bit tacky. That's just my opinion. But the fact is like those guys were all invested in that. And then Norris and Kachuk spent 15 minutes after the fan appreciation night game just signing autographs and stuff. And I don't know about you, but like, we don't need high character veterans. We already have high character guys. One of my buddies went to the Sens game earlier against the Flyers. And he was by the glass with his brother, and Norris came out of the tunnel and was like, "Oh, hey guys, how's it going?" He started talking to them.
and I should clarify that I don't think these guys, our young players, are high character guys because we had Eric Goodbranson for 30 games last year. I think
you don't know that.
I think that we drafted good guys, and we did a good job scouting our prospects and bringing them on, and that's great. But it's like, I think surrounding them with bad players who are, supposedly, who are nice dudes, is not what like made them this way. But anyway,
the one thing I'll add to that to kind of finish this topic off is that Dorian didn't allude to he didn't indicate specifically who the player was, but he alluded to who it was. He said a player that's been in the league a long time. I imagine Holden, but anyway, said about the locker room that it is the best locker room that he's ever been in, and that there's no cliques. Everybody gets along with everybody. And to me, that's huge. Because like when Kyle, like even on the 2017, when Kyle Turris was here, remember afterwards, like when I can't remember if he was interviewed in Nashville or after he left, but he basically said like there were some guys in the locker rooms who he wasn't really close to, and like Bobby Ryan was one of them. And
but I from what I understand, and I think it's been talked about a little bit, is that they didn't like each other at all.
No, and that's what I'm saying though, right? Like this locker room, it doesn't seem like that's an issue.
Yeah, I don't think it helped that Bobby Ryan is like a staunch conservative and Turris is not.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but anyway, we're going to talk about the Belleville Senators now, and they are in the playoffs finally. It seemed like a couple seasons ago they had the dream team with Basseson and Norris, and they just weren't able to go in the playoffs because COVID hit and it got all canceled and all that. They're finally getting another shot at it. They don't have the same dream team, but they do have some interesting Sens prospects, and it'll be good to follow how they're doing. So they're playing Rochester to start things off. Pretty good team. They have Jack Quinn, and I feel like there's another player on that team who I'm forgetting, but they have a good AHL squad.
Do they have Paterka?
Yes, I think it's Paterka. Yeah. So they'll
be Ukko Pekka-Luukkonen, who is an excellent goalie.
Very true. So there'll be a tough test for the B-Sens. We'll see what happens. But yeah, like, I don't know. Predictions from you guys. You think they're going to go past this round?
I think I'm definitely jumping in front of Bennett here. I think the addition of Ridley Gregg is going to be massive. I don't think Tyler Boucher is going to be that much of an impact on, like, he'll probably be put on the third line.
Well, he's dealing with a family matter too, so he won't be playing.
As of
he did get added to their roster. Yeah.
He was added to the roster, but he was not brought up by Troy Mann today on the radio. He did an interview. He did not bring up Boucher at all.
All right. Well, and like I saw, he was added to the roster. Yes. If he does play, I think he'll be, put on the bottom six. I don't think he's at all ready for the pro game, but like Ridley Gregg's game right now is on it's on another level. And I know Troy Mann loves him. Like, yeah. Oh my God.
So I'll let Bennett get a word in here, but Troy Mann did bring up Ridley Gregg on the radio today in his interview. He basically said that right now the roster is the strongest it ever has been. They have one guy coming back from, I believe, a hand injury. Troy Mann didn't want to put him in the first game of the series. He said Gregg is coming off of his own playoff run, flying in, has had no practices with the team. Basically, he just wants him to get some reps before he puts him in the lineup. But he said Ridley Gregg is number one to come into the lineup, depending on what happens in game one. He said he really likes Ridley Gregg, and obviously he wants him in the lineup, but he just thinks for the first game he needs to sit out, and then after that, they'll see what happens. But yeah, I agree. I think Ridley Gregg is a phenomenal piece for them to get for their run, and hopefully he jumps in there right away and goes off. We'll see. But yeah, Bennett, I'll just get your thoughts on the B-Sens.
Yeah, like you alluded to off the top, I mean, like, we were deprived of a legitimate chance for the Belleville Sens to win a Calder Cup in the truncated 2019-20 season that got canceled due to COVID. That team was legit. It was the real deal. And we know it's a real deal because those guys are now playing for the Senators and they're tearing it up, right? So, so it's a different Belleville team, but there's still some strong pieces down there. And I think the Belleville playoffs provide guys like Gustafsson with an opportunity to redeem themselves a little bit after what was a disappointing season for him with the Senators. If he can put together a strong push in the playoffs, I don't know if the plan was for him to be the starter or if that'll be or whoever it's going to be. But I think it would be awesome if he could put some solid results together. I'm really excited to see what Ridley Gregg can do. He's been great this season. I echo Matt's thoughts about Tyler Boucher. I think that it's probably a bridge too far for him at this point in his career. He's still a very raw prospect. But if he does get a game or two, who knows? Maybe it can surprise people. But yeah, I think, and we've got Sokolov, we've got Kastelik, who has shown some impressive performances in the NHL. I think it's really important for these guys to play some meaningful games, even if they're AHL games. The AHL is a legitimate league; it's a professional league. Some of I've heard analysts
arguably the best the best hockey league outside of the NHL too.
Exactly. Yeah, I was about to say that. I've heard analysts say that it is the second best hockey league in the world. So it's legitimate, and we should not we should not dismiss the games and the experience that those guys can earn playing in the AHL playoffs.
Yeah, and Troy Mann actually added to that. He did talk about his past experience with the Hershey Bears and the trophies they won. And he said a lot of the guys having that playoff grind and learning that, it helped them become successful NHL contributors. He said the only players who wouldn't really benefit from stuff like that are guys who jump in the NHL right away because they're so skilled, like Alex Ovechkin.
Sure.
So obviously, Sokolov, and I know on my summary post on Reddit, someone was like, wait, you're saying Sokolov's not the level of Ovechkin? Draft bust, like joking, but for Sokolov, also for JBD and Lassie Thompson, that'll be huge for them to get some top 4 minutes in a playoff run. It'll be big for them because JBD, I know, had time with the University of North Dakota playing some top 4 minutes in the playoffs there. Lassie Thompson, I'm not sure how much time he got with Kelowna in the WHL, but either way. Timra. Yeah, but either way.
Ilves.
Right, but it'll have been a while, so I think it'll be good for both of them. The one other thing is he spoke highly, Troy Mann, that is, of both Lassie Thompson and Jacob Bernard-Docker. He said, from start to finish, Lassie Thompson was the steadier of the two, more consistent, reliable guy. But he said in the last 6 weeks leading up to the postseason that Jacob Bernard-Docker has been excellent. That was the word he used. He said he's the first guy over the boards for the power play unit. He blocks shots more than any guy he's coached. He said he does whatever he can to block those shot lanes, which is good to hear. I mean, I don't want him to get injured, but it's good to hear that he, like on the PK or whatever it is, that he's blocking all these shots. Hopefully it's not because they're getting caved in, but it's good to hear that he's, defending like he's been advertised as doing well at. So they said they still want to work on JBD's footwork, but hopefully that comes with time. And I'm just excited to see both these guys in the playoff run. Sokolov, you brought up Kastelik. It'll be good for all these guys.
How have we not talked about a 19-year-old Roby Urventi?
Roby Urventi, true.
He's been killing it. And, one of the more exciting prospects for me anyways, and as a 19-year-old playing in the second best hockey league in the world and doing things he does best, which is scoring goals. I like a lot of things about the Belleville Senators roster. Gustafsson is starting, and I think he's been on a bit of a tear down there. So having everybody firing on all cylinders, injecting Ridley Gregg into that second game, it would be huge to beat Rochester because they do have the reigning MVP in Jack Quinn, who I'm happy to see sort of bounce back after everybody was like, oh, what a crappy pick by Buffalo.
Yeah.
But this is their first taste of playoff hockey. And I think there's a lot of sick prospect storylines for the Sens, and JBD and Lassie Thompson being the guys down there is not a bad problem to have.
So while Belleville's season is definitely not over just yet, Ottawa's is. And so it's time for our Senstennial Awards. So we're giving awards for the most impressive player, most disappointing player, and the most surprising player. So let's start off with most impressive. And Bennett, you wanted to hit off this list, so you get to start it off for us here.
Yeah, for sure. I think that at different times in this season, we all probably would have had different answers for who the most impressive player is. But if I'm trying to think about sort of the player who, for the most time throughout the season, impressed me the most, then it's got to be Drake Basseson. He had 44 points in 46 games played. And so he finished the season with a 0.96 points per game percentage, which is the highest on the team, except for Matthew Joseph, who only played for a handful of games. He was, without a doubt, the team's best player prior to his injury by noted low-character guy Aaron Dell back in February, which was brutal and really derailed what could have been a monster season for him in his first year playing with a big boy contract. But even still, I mean, he in the 46 games that he played, he was arguably the Sens' best, most consistent forward. He showed ability all year long to dictate play from the wing. He scored some excellent goals, including a few snipes earlier in the year on the power play. And, towards the end of the season, he scored that great overtime goal that we saw against New Jersey with that nice little toe drag and 5-hole. So we know that the skill is there. We're also seeing the consistency, which is the hardest part for these young players, and he's delivering on that. His contract is looking like an absolute steal after this season that he put up, even though it was truncated because of that bullshit injury. I think he was just all around the Sens' most impressive player this year.
What do you think, other Matt?
That's a really good answer. But I did not pick Drake Basseson.
I know who you're going with. Say it.
Mine might be a little interesting. Mine is Artem Zub.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go with Anton Forsberg, but anyway.
No. I picked Artem Zub because he was by far the most impressive because of how consistent he was. I don't think he had bad games. And if he did, they were overshadowed by the vibes that man exudes. He got to start the season with Thomas Shabbat. That was a really big deal for a lot of people. And I think he was up to the task every single night. There was a breakdown on The Athletic, and he was considered to be the 16th best shutdown defenseman in the league. Which that's a pretty awesome number to be, and with some like elite defensemen. His ability to play with so many different players this season, because realistically he was all over the map because of how consistent he was, just shows what kind of player that Zub is. He showcase some offensive capabilities that I think a lot of people could see, but last year I think he was just figuring out the NHL, whereas he figured it out and then nobody could figure out Zub. But now everything about his game is awesome, and we, as I said, we found a diamond in a very rough place, and I genuinely hope we're able to get a contract done with him, because I hope he finishes his career as a Senator because of how good he is.
High praise. For mine, I want to give a very, very strong honorable mention to Anton Forsberg, because I think he had an extremely impressive season, all things considered. But I have to, my heart is telling me to go with Tim Stützle. And I know it wasn't over the entire course of the season. I agree with Bennett. If Drake Batherson had played the entire season, maybe my answer would have been different. But Tim Stützle took his game to a new level, was a point per game in the last 30 games of the season, was a monster. And his faceoffs need work for sure. But every time I watch the team, you just see the footwork he has, the skill, the speed, like his vision and everything that he brings to the table. And I don't know how you can walk away from a Sens game and not be excited about the future of not just like him as a player, but as the team, because of what he brings to the table. Like, he is going to elevate that team to a level that maybe only Carlson has done for the Senators in the last, 10, 15 years. And I think that is extremely exciting. And to me, it's just extremely impressive to see what he can do on a night-to-night basis. And so he impressed me a hell of a lot. And I don't think I'm alone in that one. So I'm going to leave it at that.
He was incredible, and he was very much in the top 3 of most impressive for me anyways. So I'm glad somebody picked him.
Okay, we'll pass it off now. Most disappointing. And Bennett, I'd love to hear yours. Go for it.
Yeah, I thought a lot about this one because so many players disappointed me. I think the sort of standard answer, and I don't think that it would be wrong, would be Matt Murray. But I didn't pick Matt Murray because he disappointed me so much last year that I didn't technically pick him last year, but it's just like my expectations for him were low coming into the season after his sort of poor campaign last year. And so I wasn't expecting much from him. And he delivered on those low expectations. So I don't consider that as much of a disappointment. I will tell you what did disappoint me though, and that's Colin White. And I think that he deserves an asterisk here because he was injured for most of the season and only played in 24 games. But I think that also feeds into the disappointing aspect because this was supposed to be probably the make or break year for Colin White. And he ended up with 24 games played and 10 points and didn't really stand out in a single game. And that's just not the season that he hoped for. That's not the season that the franchise hoped for. And it's probably his last one as a Senator because he is a victim of that contract that he signed right out the gate, the first guy to commit to the team after they blew it all up. And he earned a contract based on skating on a wing with Mark Stone the whole year. And, centering a line with Mark Stone the whole year. And now we cut to where we are today. He's not a center anymore, and he doesn't play with Mark Stone anymore. And the production and the value that we thought he could bring to this team just aren't there. And that is disappointing. And, it sucks because he's had bad luck with injuries and stuff. But ultimately, this you have to be ruthless when building a Stanley Cup contender, and you can't keep guys around in the hope on bad contracts in the hope that they'll turn it around and they'll put it together and that the injuries will go away. I mean, if a guy can't have a role on your team year in, year out, they have to go. And I think, unfortunately, Colin White has to go off the back of this season.
Other Matt, what do you got for me?
I was going to go with Colin White as well, actually.
Oh, really?
But
I thought I was going off the board with that one, but
no, I was going with the sort of mindset that you had.
That man is so disappointing that why even mention him?
or like Nikita Zaitsev was so disappointing, but I don't have expectations for the guy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But with that said, I am going to pick Matt Murray.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was going to bounce back. I thought he was going to have a season of, an off season where he could heal and all of that. And he came in and had some okay games at the start of the year. Didn't set the world on fire, but was solid. And then the hammer drops and he gets injured. And then he goes down to the AHL and then comes up and plays quite exceptionally, really. And plays at the level that we know a Stanley Cup winning Matt Murray should. And then gets hurt again. I think what's disappointing is the fact that we're spending $6.5 million on a guy who can't stay healthy. And to a point, it becomes less of a this is an Ottawa Senator player, he's disappointing me. It's you need to stay healthy to stay alive, bro. You've had 3 big concussions in the last 2 years. You've had back injuries. You've had this, that, and the other thing. I want to see Matt Murray succeed. And it sounds like he'll have the opportunity to come back yet again next year. I think that's a mistake because you have your guy in Forsberg. And you also have a one-way contract for Philip Gustafsson next year, who looks as a solid NHL backup. Matt Murray's injury history doesn't show me that next year he's going to play a 30-game season. I want to see him do well. I'm consistently disappointed by the guy.
Okay, so I understand why Matt Murray is disappointing. I don't think his on ice play is disappointing, and people can come at me if they want.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to come at you.
I don't.
Been not good.
I totally disagree with that, and I think people are being. Honestly, Sens fans are so fickle with goalies. He had an 11-game stretch this season where he had a .950 save percentage and a 2 goals against average. 11 games.
How many games are in a season?
Oh yeah, but
11 games is nothing.
No, I know.
It's literally he played well literally for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
he's had
that's nothing. It doesn't do anything.
I know.
For the team.
I get that, but he's been on the IR. The most disappointing part has been his injuries and health. I don't think it's been his on ice play, and I think people are just saying that when he's been better than Gustafsson, hands down, in their starts overall. And if people are thinking that Gus has been the better of the two, they're completely wrong and they're lying to themselves. And I think that. Yeah, Matt Murray's health, extremely disappointing. Having COVID twice this season, being on the IR 5 different times, like that is ridiculous. And like Matt said, he can't roll in here next season and only play like 30 or less games. But that might be the realistic scenario. I think for Matt Murray, if he doesn't get healthy, I think they'll keep him on the roster because you can put him on LTIR. You don't have to buy him out or anything. And he can just sit there and you get 80% of that money insured. And you just get to keep that as basically free cap space. Yeah. So that's probably the most disappointing part rather than his on ice play. Like, sure, he could be better, but God, the Sens weren't icing very good teams in front of him. If we're looking back at October and November when people had COVID, were injured. And anyway, I could go on, but my most disappointing was actually in line with both of you. First off, with Colin White. I actually didn't think he was an off the board pick. To me, Colin White, coming back this season, it was do or die for him.
Yeah.
He's essentially playing to not be traded or bought out this offseason. And so if he's not producing and he's not bringing like an exceptional two-way game, then what are you paying him almost $5 million for? And I think, Bennett, you're right. Like, he really benefited from playing with Mark Stone. And, that's kind of the price they paid. And I remember at the time when he was signed, everyone said this will be a steal of a contract. But really, I don't think we should have made that conclusion because he was playing with Mark Stone.
Yeah.
So
I think we also were hoping Mark Stone would be coming back.
Yes, that's definitely a part of it. I think a lot of people wanted Tkachuk, Colin White, and Mark Stone to be a line going forward. And at the time, it potentially could have been like a first line in quotations, right? Because at that time, Colin White still had the whole, he's kind of like a Bergeron, like any two-way player, like, for example, Shane Wright, he has a good two-way game. What's he being compared to? He's being compared to Bergeron. Anyway, so for me, Colin White had to come in this season. He had to produce and he had to show, hey, I'm a top 6 forward. Don't get rid of me. And he didn't show that. And I love the guy. His character is great. I see people showing lineups for next season, him rolling back in the 4th line. If you're rolling back Colin White in a 4th line role and he has 3 years left on his contract, you do not deserve to be a general manager. Like, for the business decision, you have to decide to either trade his contract, whether that means you're getting a bad contract back or not, that might be a little bit better in your mind, or you have to buy him out now while his contract will only cost you 1/3 of the amount. Because if you only have to pay, I think it's like, out of the next 6 seasons, 5 of them, you'd have to pay $865K against the cap. And 1 season, you actually get a relief of $600K. To get that instead of, $4.9 million almost over the next 3 seasons, I think you have to do it. It's a no-brainer. And then that opens up space for a Josh Norris contract, a Tim Stützle extension, a Zub extension. But anyway, that's getting besides the point. So I say Colin White. We'll finish it off. We'll try and be brief with the most surprising. And of course, Bennett, you can kick us off.
Yeah. Most surprising to me was, and finally we're giving this guy a shout out after the year that he had, Anton Forsberg. I mean, I expected him to, at the start of this year, we thought he would be trade bait. We thought that he would be the odd man out of the 3 goalies. We figured, maybe Matt Murray can put it together. Maybe he can't, but we have Gustafsson waiting in the wings, and Forsberg is just there and we have to figure out what to do with him. It was Forsberg's crease this year. Murray was a non-factor for 60% of the season due to LTIR or poor play. And Gustafson did not have a good year. He was showing some growing pains. He's been in and out of the AHL. It was Forsberg was the guy that stepped up. He delivered 22 wins. He in 46 games played. He had a .917 save percentage, which is above league average. He had a 2.82 goals against on a not good team. And he was by far our best goalie, which was a hell of a surprise to me. And you know what? He earned a 3-year extension right before the trade deadline. He provided some stability that we haven't seen in the Sensnet in a while. The jury is, there are question marks over whether he can continue this level of play in over a couple of years, or whether this will be another instance of the Sens, jumping the gun on signing a goalie who showed some flashes of skill. But I want to believe, and based on the work that he's done with the Sens and prior to joining the Sens, that he isn't a flash in the pan, that he has the grounding and the skills and the posture and everything that you need to be a successful NHL starter, or at least, like a 1A kind of starter that is sort of more the norm with teams today. He doesn't have to play 60 games. He can play 46 or 50, and if he's good in those 50, that's good enough to be a starter. If you've got possibly a rejuvenated either Murray or Gustafson, I don't think it's going to be Murray, but a rejuvenated other guy to pick up the other 30 games or so. Anyway, so I wanted to give a shout out to Forsberg. He's really earned the respect of Sens fans this year. It's great for him to get that contract that everybody chases their whole career. Goalies are voodoo. I mean, this could be just the tip of the iceberg, or this could be the best part of his career. What we just saw, and who knows? But yeah,
literally the exact person I was going to pick. I did not expect Anton Forsberg to do what he did this season. I was very much on the trade him, get some value back. But I think my switch flipped when Matt said, well, he's coming around at the time that Craig Anderson did. And I was like, oh, damn, you're right. And I haven't looked back since. I think he's played excellent. He's kept us in games, and he deserves the contract. And it's not a Hammond situation. It's not a Mike Condon situation where you have a really good year and then your body gives out. And it isn't an Anders Nielsen situation either because of concussion issues. This guy is legit. He looks legit. He's playing legit. And he's earned every right to be the number one guy in Sens land.
Yep. So because of sample size, I don't think that I can choose this player. I have to say, Matthew Joseph, he was very surprising for me when Ottawa got him from Tampa Bay. He showed a lot more than what I was expecting of him, but he only played 11 games, I think, for the Sens. 11 games. So I didn't want to say him most surprising. I'm going to go season wide. And for me, I kind of have to go with Brady Tkachuk. And for me, Brady Tkachuk, because he took an offensive step forward that I think a lot of people weren't expecting him to. And I mean,
Bennett.
Yeah.
No, and it's not even a shot at Bennett. It's just in general. I think a lot of people were like, he looks like he's capped at 50, 60 points. He hasn't shown that he can do more than that 3 seasons in a row. And I was of the mind, no, I think he has another level. And playing with Norris and Basseson, and I know Basseson ended up getting injured, but he really started to show not just, I'm playing with good players, so I'm producing more, but I saw him actually take a step forward offensively. And I could see him starting to better read when he's in the offensive zone, where players are, when to make a pass, checking to see whether a guy's open back door, and then getting a saucer through traffic to that player, stuff that I was very impressed with. His shot, he wasn't going out and scoring Josh Norris-esque goals every day, but he was getting himself in the positions to deflect pucks in, get pucks right in close in the crease to score, or, his wrist shot looked good at times when he used it, and he scored that way. And we saw that in the last game of the season against Philly. So for me, he's taken a big step forward offensively, and even in the defensive end. I think it improved as the season went on. There was definitely some rough games on his behalf there, but there were times where I noticed he would forecheck and he would predict where the player was going to pass the puck on the zone exit, and he would pick it off and generate offensive zone pressure from those pickoffs, those takeaways. So that was very impressive to me, and I really hope that he can continue that trend next season. He finished out this season with, I think, like a wrist injury, a back injury. He was not playing healthy. So to finish with 67 points in 79 games, I was very surprised by his effort this season. And I think that he has another gear that we'll get to see. And I hope that he stays a consistent 30 goal scorer, because that'd be huge. And I can't remember if it was Ben or other Matt, but this is the first season in 10 years where the Sens have had not one, but 2 30 goal scorers, which is great. And so hopefully that continues next year. But yeah, those are the Senstennial Awards.
That's the season.
That's the season. Thank you so much for being with us this entire time, whether on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere else you listen to our podcast. Really appreciate it. Please just follow us on Reddit, on Twitter, on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Obviously, we're most active on Twitter. That's basically it. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We're definitely going to do a couple more episodes. We're going to do one that's a draft primer. We'll do a post-draft episode and free agency, and then we'll probably call it for the summer. So thank you to all of our listeners and watchers. We really appreciate you. And go Sens, go.
Let's go.
Go Sens, go, baby.